I didn't get a good sleep, so this might not be as clear as it ought to be, but this is in regards to a post that Moses presented with Michael Tsarion, and it talks in particular to the selfhood path. In the initial part that I'm really going to focus on here, he delves into the idea that, in essence, we ought to focus on sort of the Egyptian or the mythical, I suppose, cultural paths of religion, where they were very focused on the individual creating the path to their own depths, as it were. So the underworld is a good example, where indeed the individual would have to carve out novelty in their own way to craft their own path of their religious future, in some sense. Maybe I'm not articulating that perfectly, but roughly speaking. There's interesting parallels potentially here with, say, someone like Terence McKenna. And broadly speaking, I think, at least my theory, presents that there might be fractal parallels here. That's a bigger conversation, but he talks about novelty a lot himself, and about using particularly psychedelics as a means for which one can, in some important ways, explore paths or trajectories that the human psyche has not yet traversed. And I think in some important sense, there's this archaic revival in McKennian notions that are reflected in what Tsarion was saying here in relation to the Egyptian culture. In a bigger sense, in the sense that I suppose things like spiral dynamics takes into account, there is, if you read it in a certain light, a notion of an archaic revival, a sense in which we have to restore certain roots of, in particular, like the shamanistic path, to bring health back to the world. However, I want to suggest simultaneously that if things like spiral dynamics is accurate, then there seems to be other methods that will be emergent on the horizon thereafter that we should make space for, I think, because there are high levels of probability that they will indeed emerge. So some of the ways that I've looked at that is, in particular, that we can see with things like advanced virtual realities, where it raises questions that things like Elon Musk talked about, where there's a high probability that we might be in a simulation. Therefore, a certain kind of faith emerges again, wherein we can have faith that some higher guiding hand is actually guiding this simulation, as it were, and then we can get off in the races in a certain new kind of mythos in some important sense, but one that includes reason, one that includes pluralism and certain kinds of integralism in some important sense. So in that sense, maybe we shouldn't place too much faith in the selfhood path, although we need that, I think, right now very much. We need the strong man, in my opinion, to stand up to a lot of the corruption that we see on the planet right now, and it takes a certain kind of power orientation, in my opinion, to actually do that, to have the guts, the bravery, and the novelty to actually do that. Perhaps. Be well.